When Vince Foster left his White House office on that July day in 1993, he told his secretary that he would be back. But the deputy White House counsel and boyhood friend of Bill Clinton never returned. And almost 3 years later, theories and speculation about his mysterious death live on. On July 20th, 1993, Vincent Foster's body was found here in Fort Marcy Park in Northern Virginia, just outside of the District of Columbia. But that's about the only thing about Foster's death that all parties can agree on. How Foster's body got here, even how Foster died, is still not clear. The 1994 report by independent counsel Robert Fisk says the evidence overwhelmingly supports the conclusion that Vincent Foster killed himself in Fort Marcy Park, and adds, quote, "There is no evidence to the contrary." But that is simply not true. Here are just some of the inconsistencies, many from Fisk's own report. Police say Foster walked to the edge of this steep berm, sat down, and pressed a 1913 .38 caliber pistol deep against the back of his mouth and pulled the trigger. The gunshot wound should have been extremely gory, because a large caliber handgun often leaves a large wound, while the heart typically keeps pumping, leaving a lot of blood and brain tissue called blowback all over the weapon. There was none. The coroner said the exit wound for the .38 caliber bullet was only about 1 inch wide. There was an unusually small amount of blood under Foster's head, and no bone fragments. No bullet was found either, even though searchers managed to find all sorts of ammunition dating back to the Civil War. Powder burns indicate Foster's hands were not on the grip of the gun when it was fired. His teeth were not damaged from the recoil of the .38. There was no trace of soil or grass on Foster's shoes, even though he supposedly walked 700 feet through the park. No one in the park that day ever saw Foster alive. No one reported hearing a gunshot. Foster's fingerprints were not on the weapon. Foster's wife had trouble identifying the gun as her husband's. The .38 was made from 2 guns, fitting the classic profile of a hard-to-trace drop gun, often used to make murders look like suicides. Foster was covered from head to toe with carpet fibers. Blood tracks on his face and shoulder indicate his head had been moved in as many as 4 positions after he allegedly pulled the trigger, even though death was determined to have been instantaneous. And blood trails from Foster's nose and mouth inexplicably defied gravity and traveled upwards as he lay on the steep slope. Critical crime scene photographs are missing. The first paramedics on the scene from this fire station in McLean, Virginia, said they found Foster lying perfectly straight as if ready for the coffin, and suggested later they thought it was a homicide. And some of their accounts about where they found Foster's body differ from where the park police say it was, suggesting police wanted to conceal the real crime scene from reporters and others.
At what point do you begin saying something is wrong here? This doesn't add up.
Chris Ruddy of the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review is the only reporter known to be working on the Foster death full-time. His work has been compiled in the book Vincent Foster, The Ruddy Investigation.
There's been a tremendous reluctance by authorities to look into this case. We saw that Robert Fisk came along and basically rubber-stamped the police investigation. His FBI agents went before Congress and said the park police made no major errors in their case, which is laughable. Ken Starr, the independent counsel, said he was going to look into this, but we know that he has been unwilling to get to the bottom of this.
Starr's lead prosecutor quit last year after he said he was kept from pursuing the case too vigorously. There were plenty of witnesses in the park the day Foster was found, and you're about to hear from one of them. Washington, D.C. resident Patrick Knowlton was at Fort Marcy about an hour before Foster's body was discovered, and he agreed to this exclusive interview with CBN News. Knowlton has passed a polygraph test.
As soon as I came up the driveway here, I noticed a brown Honda parked there, older reddish brown, rust brown colored Honda with Arkansas license plate. As I pulled in, I saw another vehicle parked maybe 4 spaces down. I didn't see the license plate. All I saw was a single gentleman sitting in the car. He had the car backed in. But then when the window came down and he gave me this intense glare like, you shouldn't be here kind of look, you should leave kind of look, I took it to heart that he was here for some kind of activity that he wasn't here to enjoy the park. That's what I thought. The glare was very intense and it made me feel very uneasy.
Knowlton went up into the park to relieve himself, and when he came back, he noticed a dark blue suit jacket, a briefcase, and 2 empty wine cooler bottles in the brown Honda with Arkansas plates. Knowlton called authorities the next day, but was never questioned until 9 months later in 1994. Then in 1995, when he was subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury, strange things began to happen.
I was actually beginning to be harassed by well-dressed men who approached me either head-on or walked at me or walked from the side of me or walked from behind me, just giving me intense glares.
Men Knowlton said were clearly trying to frighten him into not testifying. He took witnesses with him when he was followed, including a reporter who verified that it was not his imagination. Then there's the mysterious letter that the White House offered as Foster's suicide note. The letter, torn into 28 pieces, suddenly appeared in Foster's office briefcase after it had already been searched twice. The letter is in fact not a suicide note, and it has no fingerprints on it, even though it was found ripped in more than 24 pieces. Even stranger, 3 leading handwriting experts examined it and declared it to be an obvious forgery. But perhaps most disturbing are instances where FBI agents either misstated what witnesses told them or tried to get them to change their story. Knowlton says what he told agents was changed in the official report.
When I was shown those 302s, I looked at them and I started reading them and thinking, you know, those aren't my words, that's not what I said.
The FBI version of Knowlton's statement said that, among other things, he would not be able to pick out the man he saw in the parking lot in Fort Marcy.
What in fact I told them was if they showed me a lineup or if they gave me a photo spread, I could have picked the guy out, you know, very easily.
With the help of a police artist, Knowlton even sketched this drawing of the man. FBI agents also appeared to try to get Arkansas state troopers to change their account of the time that they learned of the Foster death. Roger Perry, a 20-year veteran, was working as Governor Jim Guy Tucker's bodyguard on July 20th, 1993, when he received a call from Helen Dickey, who was Chelsea Clinton's nanny.
It was sometime between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. Helen Dickey called me from the White House and told me that Vince Foster had gotten off work that evening, went out to his car in the parking lot, and shot himself in the head.
You remember those words specifically?
That's the exact words. I wrote those words down on a steno pad.
When Dickey called Perry is crucial, because if there is a cover-up of the Foster death, it could unravel around the White House claims of when it knew about the death. If the White House knew earlier than it says it did, then that would have allowed officials time to clear Foster's office.